Black Out Loud Media Group. Welcome back to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast, the place where poetry meets conversation. I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and before we get into today's topic, make sure you hit that plus sign so you don't miss an episode. Also, please subscribe to my blog, thebrownssugarcafe.blog, and if you find any value in this episode or any other episodes, make sure you leave a heartfelt review. So with that being said, let's get to it. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. Hope that everybody's doing well. Hope that you are doing your thing in 2024. Hope that everything started off well. Everything you hope for, all of your plans are setting into action. All of your goals are taking place. If you haven't listened to my last episode, make sure to do that. But today we have a special guest. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, man. My name is Marcus Ellis, and first of all, Brother Terrence, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Like I said, I'm Marcus Ellis. I'm a father of 5. I live in Pensacola, Florida, which is in the panhandle of Florida on the Gulf of Mexico, which we also call LA, Lower Alabama.
Okay.
It's not. It's technically Florida, but it's not Florida living. But I live in a good place, and I have a lot of things going on, man. I'm a real estate investor. I'm a rock and roll lead singer. I've got an I Love You movement. I'm a podcaster like you, a motivational speaker like you. So got a lot of irons in the fire at 51 years old, bro.
Yeah, you the person who told me to stop saying I'm busy. What you say, booked and blessed?
Heavily booked and blessed.
Heavily booked and blessed. Yeah.
Every day.
Man, it's good to talk to you. The last time I talked to you, I guess face to face on the phone or whatever, is when I was on your podcast.
Right. Yeah. Strike a Chord Live podcast. We have that with my brother, Colin Harbor in Dallas, Texas. We're childhood friends. We've been friends since we were in 1st grade. And then in 8th grade, his dad is a pastor. So in 8th grade, his dad moved away. We hadn't talked to each other in 33 years and reconnected. And now we have a live podcast that we've been doing for about 2 years.
When I heard the story about how you two reconnected, I was just like, this is divine intervention.
Amen.
For my listeners who don't know the story, how did you two reconnect?
All right. Well, that'll dovetail into my Hey Guess What I Love You group. So during the 2020 election, when things got really heavy, before it, when people were hating on each other, my social media feed was angry and I didn't like it. Right. And so I changed that, and in a moment of prayer, God told me to start telling people that I love them. And I was like, what in the world is this? You want me to walk up to strangers and tell people I love them? So it hit me in the car that morning after that prayer. I was driving my kids to school, and something that I always do is, hey kids, hey, guess what? I said, what, Daddy? I said, I love you. And I was like, that's it, right? Hey, guess what? I love you. That's my brand. So I was doing that thing. I was randomly walking up to people and telling them that I love them. And it was on Facebook. And Colin hadn't been on Facebook, he said, in about a year. He turned on Facebook and he said the first thing he sees is me walking down the street, pointing my finger in the camera at him and saying, hey, guess what? I love you.
Wow.
So in that same moment of prayer when God told me to tell people that I love them, he also said, start a podcast. And I'm like, this is crazy. This is just my mind, because I had no desire to start a podcast. I had no desire to do anything. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have equipment, nothing. So the very next day of this prayer, all this stuff, this I love you stuff, Colin sees me online and he messages me on Facebook and says, hey man, I want to talk to you. Give me a call. It's like, cool. This is my bro. We played baseball together forever. I've known our parents were good friends. We didn't have social media in the 80s, bro. So when he moved away in 86, we had phone numbers, and then you move again.
Maybe write letters, be a pen pal. That's it.
That's it, right? So you grow apart. So we hadn't talked in 33 years. And I call him and he gets on the phone. He's like, I want to talk and I want you to listen. And I was like, okay, no problem, bro. And he said, I don't know what's going on, but something's telling me that you and I need to start a podcast.
Wow.
And Terrence, I literally threw my phone across the room. Like, I was just shocked. And I threw my phone across the room. He's like, "What was that?" I was like, my phone. I threw my phone across the room. I'm so flustered by because I had a
Yeah.
prayer yesterday, and God told me to start a podcast. And so he was like, "Wow, like you said, this is divine. This is meant to be."
Yeah.
So it's a positive podcast. It's a motivational thing. We come up with motivational topics. We've been on a little bit of hiatus because we started this during COVID, and
Right.
it was really easy to do that stuff during COVID.
Yeah, very
And
easy.
then and we kept doing it coming out of COVID, but after that, schedules get busy and things like that. So we've taken a little bit of hiatus, try to figure out what we're going to do next. But the Strike a Chord podcast is still alive and well.
Okay, yeah, and anybody listening, you can go check it out on YouTube. Do you all have audio? Is it
We
available?
do, yeah.
Okay.
You put me on the spot though, but we're everywhere. I can't remember. It's not Linktree, but it's something like that we use where
Okay.
you can go there. I'll get that information. But yeah, we're on iTunes and Spotify and all that good stuff too.
Okay, yeah, and it's definitely on YouTube. So make sure
but the
to
cool
check
thing
that
about
out.
on YouTube is that you can see us.
Yeah.
It is a live video streaming podcast. So there's audio on your audio apps, and then you have video on your video apps.
Okay. Yeah, I really enjoyed Strike a Chord. I remember kind of not really being a guest, but
You were a
back when
guest.
you used to stream it into, well, before I was an actual guest, we used to
Right.
stream into Clubhouse.
Right.
I jumped on a couple of episodes there, and I could never find it on Facebook. And then I realized later that we had to be friends for me to see it on Facebook. Because we finally became friends on Facebook. I'm like, this was the problem all this time. Because I was searching and I would come up with different type of Strike a Chords. I'm like, no, this is not Marcus's. What is this? Yeah. So finally got it together. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed like that morning live stream, because
Well, now you're putting pressure on me, bro.
Hey, with technology these days, it can look like it's live.
True.
You won't be able to respond to the chats like that.
Sure.
But maybe you could be on standby just to respond to the chats, but it gives a good start to the morning.
Amen.
Like the conversation and the guests you have and the thought-provoking topic. So, yeah, it's on hiatus now, but anybody can go, and it's evergreen because it's out there on YouTube. So anybody can come across. And I love what you all do with the shorts too.
Yeah, man.
Like,
Thanks.
you take
Colin
those really
does that.
good. Yeah, you take those really good pieces and you put them out there, so it's out there.
You're just lighting the fire, man. Colin's gonna be like, man, Terrence said so. We got to get this going back again.
Yeah, you got to, man. I know what it's like to be in a hiatus. I try to take off like during the summer, and coming back into it, I've been kind of slow. But I was working on my book, so that kind of gave me a little excuses why I'm coming back slow. But I'm getting back in the rhythm again. So I know
love
how
your
it
book,
is.
by the way. I love your book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wish I could spit like that, but no. We were talking before we got on here. I said, don't expect me to drop any bombs, any poetry on you.
Hey, like I said, if you feel the need, go ahead, man. It's
No, we'll leave that to the pros. We'll leave that to you.
So with the I love you movement,
Yeah.
I know at first were you a little nervous, like the very first time
Not
you
a little,
did it?
a lot.
Okay. What pushed you to other than obedience, like what was the thing that you was like, I'm just gonna do it?
Yeah, well, so I know you're aware. You're walking around town. You're a very alive and aware and present person. I'm sure you see people hurting all over the place.
Yeah.
And us empaths, and I know you're one too. I don't like to see an animal get hit by a car or a kid crying or something like that. So walking around, you see people that are hurting. It's just on their face, right?
Yeah.
That really encouraged me to, okay, let's pick out somebody that looks like they're hurting, and I'll just randomly walk up to people and say, hey, has anybody told you that they loved you yet today? And man, 50% of those people start crying.
Wow. Yeah.
Other people will go, no, I'm having the worst day. I needed that. Right.
Yeah.
And then there's a very small demographic, and I won't call them out, but there's a very small demographic that is not very accepting of it, and so I kind of stay away from older grandmotherly white ladies.
Okay. They probably think you trying to hit on them.
They do. You know, the funny, the first response, well, my husband did. And I said, great.
See?
My wife told me too. I love you too. But they don't accept it. Most other people, like, you know, if they say that, oh, that's so sweet, give me a hug or whatever. But let's go back to that. Let's not get into the negative part of it. The positive, and that's the small 1%. So anyways, everybody needs love. God is love.
Yeah.
The greatest commandment, other than loving God with all your heart, mind, body, soul, spirit, all that good stuff, is to love one another. Just like I love you.
Yeah, I love you too, man.
Thank you, brother. Received. So we've got to spread the love. And after a while, it got to be kind of addicting, you know, because not only are you helping people, but it pumps you up. Ooh, I made them feel good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's self-fulfilling too. But it's scary when, let's say this happened. I was walking in the mall and there was a big old biker dude, like 6'4", burly, tattoos, and you know I have tattoos. I'm not calling that out, but the scary biker types, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, nope. And I kept walking, and God said, "Turn your butt around. Go tell that guy." And I'm like, "No, please." And it's like in my head, you know. I'm like, "No, please, go tell him." And so I said, "Hey, man, excuse me." What? You know. Has anybody told you that they loved you yet today? And that dude, big old 6'4" burly biker on my shoulder, bawling. You're just like, no, man, you just made my day. Thank you. So my target is to ease the world's suffering with one I love you at a time. That's the target.
I like that.
And it can be anybody, right?
Yeah.
It could be you, it could be anybody. And like I said, 97% of the people are very receptive and appreciate it. And a lot of people, man, just break down and cry and say, you know, I haven't heard that in years. Or nobody's ever told me that they love me yet. And it starts a conversation, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just getting near people, because I love people, you know? But there's just so much hate in the world, and especially with this whole political thing. And you know, it's probably a lot of it's the technology we have. You know, back in the day when I was, you know, because I'm 51, you know, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we didn't have this instant communication. So somebody could be griping on their front porch about politics, but you don't hear about it, you know?
Yeah.
But now everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got a microphone.
Yeah.
And it's out there. So I had to turn that noise off because it was really affecting me. I don't watch the news. I'd stay in touch a little bit, but it's just like, we don't need to fill our souls with negativity. You know, we are meant to be positive and love each other. And, you know, I know the world, it can be a horrible place, but it's also a very beautiful place that God built for us. And we just got to love one another. So that's it, you know, in a nutshell. But I do it every day. I haven't stopped for years. I mean, you can't see it, folks, but I even got love tattooed on my knuckles. You know, so that's the cool thing too. Now when I do it, before I didn't have the tattoo. I've had the tattoo for about 8 months, but I'll go up to people. Hey, has anybody told you that they loved you yet? And they're like, no. And I was like, give me some love, and I'll stick out my wrist, you know, my fist.
Yeah.
And we'll fist bump, and you know, so like, oh, that's great, you know. So if I can get 100,000 people to copy me and do this thing.
That'd be world changing, yeah.
Boom. So that's what it's about. I love love. I love people. I care about people. It's selfish desire. I want people to be happy. And everybody can't be happy, but we sure can strive for that.
Yeah, and that's one of the many reasons I think why we connected so well, because my mantra is I'm on a journey to spread love in a world that seems to be full of hate. I remember the first time I put that together, I said full of hate, and then I thought about it. I was like, no, if it's full of hate, that means there's no room for love. So I said it seems to be full of hate, but there's a lot of love in the world, and I'm just trying to do my part just to spread love, and because I want to see people happy as well. I want to see people reach their full potentials. I want to see people, you know, enjoy life. You know, happiness is very important. And I think a lot of times we take it for granted. Like you mentioned earlier about social media and stuff, how everything is just readily available. it's like some people get so consumed in what they're seeing and what's going through their feeds that they forget about happiness and the happiness that they've experienced in the past, or maybe even a few minutes ago. Some people are just that deep into social media that it lets them take over.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm just
people are like want to keep up with the Joneses too. You know, you got
Who are the Joneses?
I don't know, man.
And why is
I've
everybody trying to keep up with this?
I don't know. I mean, I know the Billy Paul song, "Me and Mrs. Jones." I'm dating myself. That's a good one.
Yeah,
We got a thing going on. So I'm also a musician, folks. That wasn't the best vocal ever, but I'm not warmed up. So give me a break. But yeah, I want to ask you, because you were saying you want to see people happy. And what is that? Because I question myself, like, why is it that you want to see people happy, Marcus? Is that selfish? You know, is it that you don't like to see something negative? So have you ever thought about, like, why do you desire that just like I do?
Well, at first I thought it was just me wanting people to not be in a dark place, and just me just wanting to see people happy, because I like to laugh, I like to have fun. And so I thought it was just that, which it is partly that. But a couple of years ago, we have a big Thanksgiving dinner on my mom's side, all my aunts and uncles and everybody, come together. And a few years ago, my uncle, he was saying how we're all givers, like that's our lineage and it's in our family. So, and at that moment, it hit me like, this is why.
Right.
It's like, we're here to help people. And I had an aunt who's no longer with us, and I could just remember things about her, like she always, and all of my family. But one of the things that everybody always talks about is how she always tried to make sure everybody was good. Because I remember even hearing stories about my grandparents and stuff, my aunts and uncle moms coming home, and they're like kids in the house that they don't know, but they're in there because it was that sense of community. My grandfather was a pastor, and my grandmother, she was a social worker. So that whole community thing, and they're from a small town called St. George, it's in South Carolina. So that whole thing is just in me, just to want the best for people and want to see people happy. So, I mean, I got it honest, I guess I could say.
I love that, man. And so you just struck a chord with me. There's a little reference. I'm a taker, and I had to get over that.
Wow. Yeah.
That's what it is that by nature I can be darn selfish, and I didn't like that, right? And so where you say you come by giver by nature, I think I come as a taker by nature, and I had to really work on that as an adult. Not that I'm not a giver or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I'm a taker, and I had to work on that. So I really appreciate that answer that you just gave me, because you probably gave me my why for it. Is that I'm very blessed, man. I don't I'm not like some rich rock star or anything like that. I don't have a ton of money because I got 5 kids and things like that, but I'm very blessed. I have food in the pantry. I have a roof above my head. I have a car that runs with gas in it. And I think if we just stop for a minute and stop chasing for that gold ring and realize we got everything we need.
Yeah.
We got something to spare.
Yeah.
Somebody else, then we can change the world. So you really just got me going there.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about what you just said. Maybe that giver was in you all this time.
Sure.
And it just took certain things to pull it out of you.
Sure.
It's a lot of things that I've realized that just over time might have been there the whole time. But either we push it aside ourselves, seeing it and don't want to welcome it or recognize it, or it just was hidden into the right time.
I love that. Yeah, and also, I mean, I know you can relate with this. I don't know if you've and I've ever talked about this, but even though I look white and I sound white and all that, I'm really a Creek Indian. My lineage is Native American, and I am 100%. You cannot talk me out of it. I believe in inherited trauma coming down the line. Yeah. So I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
I mean,
I do.
My grandfather used to tell me horrible stories about when he was a child when the quote unquote cavalry would come through where they lived in southern Alabama, northern Florida. So I think those of us who have that inherited trauma and are aware of it from our ancestors, we want so bad to change that. I'm right now, my goal for my children is to break the generational poverty of being Indians, right?
Right.
Of coming down the line, in Pensacola, there's a lot of old money here. I know there is in Charleston too, bro.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
A lot of old money. Well, there's a lot of generational poverty here too. And so that's where I came from. So I'm working really hard for my children to change that aspect of it. But on a larger scale, I think because we have those types of issues and we're aware of them, then we're like, look, I don't want the next person down the line to feel this.
Yeah.
And we can change the world by, the butterfly effect or whatever you want to call it. That one person, you reach that one person, they reach somebody, and it expands from there, right?
Yeah. That exactly.
And not to bring race in it, but that's my story, right?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, you brought up a very good point, because that was, in thinking about that, some of the theme for like where I went with this last book, like
Right.
like with the George Floyd murder and just the protesting and everything that was going on.
Right.
Like I found myself writing as a way of like healing and therapy, but then I felt like my poems didn't have hope in them. It kind of lacked hope. And so I went back to the drawing board, and I wanted to provide something that gave hope. And I want to give experiences and show joy and happiness through the eyes of a Black man that everybody can enjoy. But for people to know, like, pain is not our only paintbrush. We have beautiful stories and stories that everybody can enjoy. So yeah, I understand completely what you're talking about.
You're so good. You're so good. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing, man. It's just God, man, we've got to make this world a better place.
Yeah.
And I'm going to jump tracks here and I ruffle feathers when I say this. And I know you read the book, but it seems to me that a lot of Christians have bought Bibles that don't have the red words in them because people sure ain't reading them.
Man, look, we could do a whole podcast episode about that by itself. That really irritates me because, I mean, where do I begin?
Right.
You have people, and the way you act and the way you treat people, you're some people's only way to God. You're their only connection. So if they see you mistreating people and doing all of this stuff, they're not going to only associate it with you, especially if you're walking around, beating your chest, talking about you a Christian and you holier than thou, but then you treating people like they're nothing. They're going to associate that with everybody.
Well, you know what I call that? False witness.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's what it is.
It really gets me. And I wish people would have the gall to get up and say, okay, I'm a believer, and all of this mess and stuff that I'm doing, this is not Christ-like, and I know it. This is just me.
Yeah.
Like I'm because I feel like people don't believe in. It's hard for people to believe in God because so many people misrepresent Him. So if I'm seeing you, and you telling me all of this goodness and stuff, but you're doing all this stuff, where am I supposed to go with this information?
Yeah, man. Well, that was me. I grew up in a big church here, and I called it a country club church because it was to be seen. The politicians only showed up during election time.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
All that kind of, and as a teenager, I saw that, and it really turned me, well, if this is what God is about, I don't want to have nothing to do with it. It took me to get away from that church.
Yeah.
And the church is not a building. The church is the folks in it.
It's the people.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and not to get too political, but we see politicians bending the word.
Yeah.
To put it out there, so, and I'm going to get off and somebody's going to jump on me on this, but we start talking about welfare and giving handouts and things like that. And people are like, man, no, we don't want to do that. Whatever party says, we don't want to do that. We don't want to take care of those people. Where you're sinning against Jesus because he said to take care of those poor people.
Yeah.
Right. And not to get too political, but that's where it's at for me. So that's why I have to turn that noise off, because I can't listen to somebody on TV, start talking about Jesus, and it's like, man, you hadn't even opened up the New Testament yet.
Right.
Here's another thing. I read an article where a preacher was preaching the Beatitudes, and this is a true article, and one of the folks in the congregation came up and said, what is this liberal BS you're preaching?
Wow.
And he's like, these are the words of Jesus. And they said, well, you know, and I'll also ruffle feathers, Terrence. I don't care about that. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to get so much hate for this.
Hey, man, it's okay.
So we're going off on tangents, but that's what it's about, because that's where it begins. It begins with the love of God and Christ.
Yeah.
And if we can't love each other, we're all God's children. We're all created in God's image. Judge not, lest you be judged, baby.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. It's not hard to me.
Right.
It's not hard, but you got to read the book.
Yeah, I feel you completely. Like I said, we could do a whole episode.
We will.
Yeah,
we will.
About this by itself.
But that's the point, man. Folks listening, we love each other.
Yeah, love each other. And don't let those negative misrepresentations of people keep you from building a relationship yourself. Don't let that happen. Okay? And you know, church hurt is a real thing, but you can't let that deter you. You can't let that hinder you. I mean, those are people who did those things. People who misrepresented God, who misrepresented Christ. So don't let that harp on you. Don't let that make you sour. Don't let that make you bitter. You know, I said, we could do a whole episode about it.
We'll do that. So where do you want to go from here? Now
let's move on. Your real estate.
Guess what? I love you, folks. I love you. Yeah, real estate. So here's another cool God story I got for you real quick. So I'm a musician. I sing in a big rock and roll tribute band that is classic rock, you know, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Beatles, Rolling Stones, all that kind of stuff. I've always been in music, just forever. And so I was working at a place for 15 years where we designed PA systems and lighting systems for churches, schools, all the way up to arenas like Auburn and Alabama and things like that. Right?
Oh, man, yeah.
So that was my gig, but I was the freak in the room, right? You know, the only musician, had long hair at the time. I don't now because it's falling out. But long hair and, you know, just the freak in the room, right? And spouting love. I'm also a Deadhead. I used to follow a 60s rock and roll band around called the Grateful Dead in the 80s and 90s.
Okay,
and you hear that name and you instantly think heavy metal and hate, but no, Grateful Dead was a hippie band.
Right.
And it was all based on love and it was community. We all traveled from town to town, took care of each other in this community. It was just beautiful. It was a wonderful time. And I took that with me and went from there, and I stayed in music, and there's just not a lot of money in it, right?
Right.
So I was always looking for an out, and I met somebody that said, man, you should go into real estate and flip houses. And straight up, I was scared. You know,
that's scary. Yeah.
I have 5 kids, you know, we're all on the dole for our W-2. We all, you know, have to do our thing, but I wanted out real bad. So fast forward to a conference a couple years ago. It was called Grow Your Business for God's Sake. It's changed now. It's called the Founder Con.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's mixing business and spirituality, mixing God and business to thrive, right? And there was a rapper there named Change, and it's CHANG, and then it was a backwards 3. And he's a Christian rapper, really good guy. And I didn't know him, but he was performing at this conference.
Okay.
So I went to this conference, got really excited and everything, came back. This is beginning of November of 2020, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then around Thanksgiving time, I was on a Zoom call in a prayer meeting with 4 other people, and one of the people happened to be Changed. So I had a sister that was at that conference, and she did meet him.
Yeah.
And so he just happened to be on there. Didn't know him, never met, nothing, right? And I was having a hard time. I had a really, really bad experience with a supervisor. By the way, I was right. He was wrong. Just kidding. I had a bad experience with a supervisor, and I was done, bro. Right? It
Yeah.
was just, and this was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving,
Okay.
the day before. So I had a bad experience that day, and I was on the Zoom call with these 4 people, and in the middle of the Bible group, whatever we were doing, Change says, stop, I gotta stop right now, stop. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And then he goes, I gotta talk to Marcus. And I was like, who, me? Me? Yeah. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, I don't know you, I don't know what's going on, but God is screaming at you. He's like, man, whatever that thing is that you need to do, that he's been telling you need to do, and you need to do it, the time is now. You got to go do it. Man, you could have knocked me over with a feather, right?
Yeah.
So what I do, I had just a little bit of savings. That Monday after Thanksgiving, went into my office. Normally, there's people all over the building. There's 200 people work there. People all over the place. Went in my office, didn't see anybody. So I started packing up my office. Took me about 2 hours. Went looking for every supervisor I could find to quit on the spot that day. And there was nobody there. Parking lot's full, lights on, could not find us. It was the craziest thing. So I got there by 8 o'clock. I left about 10 a.m., left with all my stuff. Nobody saw me leave, nothing. My supervisor finally calls me back about 2 p.m. that day. He said, hey man, what's going on? And I was like, well, and let me back up real quick. Before he called, I had prayed to God, because I can say some things, right? If you haven't noticed that yet, I can say some things. And I prayed, and like, hey man, give me the words I need to do this properly.
Right.
So when my supervisor called me, just hit me, and I was like, he's like, what you need, man? And I was like, well, first of all, I apologize for our argument yesterday. He said, yeah, man, no big deal. I apologize too. We were yelling at each other. And I said, well, I'm a big baseball fan, right? I'm a huge baseball fan. I used to be the biggest Oakland A's baseball fan you ever seen, but no more. I'm done with that. Back over to the Braves after that fiasco. But anyways, he said, yeah, man, you love baseball more than anybody I know. And I said, well, there comes a time when, an athlete just has to hang up his cleats. And I'm hanging up my cleats today. He said, what? You're quitting? And I was like, no, man, I'm just beginning.
Oh.
And he couldn't say nothing.
Right.
And so I had flipped one house, and it wasn't easy, but God was just saying that here's the next move, because not only am I not going into a W-2 and I'm, tied to a desk, I have the ability to help people. I help people in situations where a realtor wouldn't buy the house, right? And then on top of that, I have the freedom to do this with you right now. I have the freedom to take my girls to school and pick them up from school. I'm a very involved parent. I can be around for my wife. I'm not at an office, because I was working 10 hours a day at this place, working 50, 60-hour weeks for my whole life. I mean, that's just how it was. Yeah. Man, it's just been such a blessing. And this Thanksgiving, when it came around, I was like, man, God, it's been 2 years and you haven't let me down yet. But I will say, man, it tests your faith. And I'm like, I'm so sorry for being unfaithful, God. I'm so sorry for worrying. It's hard. It's so hard. So, we're not getting a paycheck every 2 weeks like we used to, but they're much bigger. And I've had to learn to, when the downtimes when you're not selling something. And in both years, I've just by far surpassed my salary at the other place. So I guess because I was in tune at that point, I don't feel like I'm as tapped in now as I was then, and I desire to be that tapped in again. But man, I mean, that's my story. Going into real estate investing is, number one, to help people, and then I get to make a living that way, and I get to be present for my family. I can't think of a better thing than that.
That being present for your family, you said 10 hours. That's...
Oh, my whole life. Because I was in music retail. So, it was forever. And, I have 3 grown boys and 2 little girls. So it's kind of, I'm very grateful because I got a second chance with my daughters.
Right.
Unfortunately, my boys didn't have, because I was playing music at night and then working all day. I mean, I slept 3 hours a night for 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's such a blessing. I mean, just being tapped in and then to have somebody prophesy to you to move you into the next thing, you know? So I was always praying like, dear Lord, please get me out of here. I don't know what it is. It took 15 years, but here I am.
But yeah, there's a little bit of time in our conversation. I've heard 2 different times where you've gotten confirmation.
But the thing is too, it's just like, I know we're all sinners, man, and not to harp on it too much, but I'm just like, good Lord, why do you worry? I'm naturally a worrier and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I'm a warrior too, but I'm a worry wart. And and that's just being unfaithful, right? That's not having faith in God. So man, I literally walk around with this coin in my pocket, and we'll pull it out. And it's 2 Corinthians 5-7. We walk by faith, not by sight. And that's for me, so that I know that when I start to worry, I pull out that coin and I read that verse and I know he's got me.
See, when you have these conversations, you learn a lot of stuff about people. And like I said, I've heard a lot of your different stories, but I've never heard about this coin. This is my first time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing, man. I haven't done it yet, and I want to do it, but I really think it's important for all of us who are influencers, if that's what we are, that we have to be vulnerable. People are looking at us, right?
Right.
And I'm going to tell you straight up, I suffer horribly from depression. When you see me vanish and you can't get in touch with me, I'm in a hole, right? And I want to go on social media and go live and say, hey, I suffer from depression. I haven't got the guts to do it yet, but I'm going to do it because we can help each other, right? Our mess is our message. We've heard that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Our mess is our message. A lot of people out there think they're alone. You're not alone. They think they're the only ones suffering. You're not. We're all suffering, baby. You know?
And you'd be surprised by just saying like, hey, I don't have it all together, or suffering from depression, or, you know, some days it's just hard. How many other people just start raising their hand and say, me too,
Right.
me too. And it takes us to say like, hey, I don't have it all together. I know when you see me, I'm laughing, smiling, having a good time.
Yep.
Sometimes there could be things on my mind while I'm smiling and laughing, but you don't know. So don't look at people and think that, oh man, you know, they don't have a care in the world or different things like that. Just we all handle and process things differently. And some of us, when we know we have to be in certain places to encourage and uplift people, we push through it, but we still have those moments. We still have those thoughts and those things that bother us. But like you said, if we're vulnerable and let people know, that eases the pain and pressure right there in itself. It's just like,
it does. I mean, we're all walking around with masks on, right?
yeah,
You know? So I think if we got real with each other, that would be another way to, you know, to forward the planet a little. It reminds me, there's a reason why Smokey wrote Tears of a Clown, right?
yeah.
Because that's what we're doing, right? We're us influencers out there. So I think more of us need, and I'm not saying go out there and just blast out a pity party all over social media like folks do. That's, and I'm not saying you're wrong for doing that if you are, but that turns other people off. But if you can be authentic and say, look, I know you think I got it made. Bro, I've got the most beautiful wife on the planet. I sing in a 10,000 seat arena in my band. I flip houses. I don't check in at a W-2. What could be wrong? A lot. A lot. So, and I'm not saying that for any other reason except to help the one person that hears this right now. You're not alone, baby. We got you. It's going to be okay.
Man, I think that's a perfect place for us to stop right there. Before you get out of here, let the people know how they can get in contact with you, how they could find your band, anything you want to share.
I'm Marcus Ellis on Facebook. I wear red shirts all the time, so I'm wearing a red shirt in the profile. My band is called White Tie Rock Ensemble. A lot of tribute bands will play one band and wear wigs and costumes and stuff like Led Zeppelin or whatever, and stick to one band. We play 50 different bands: David Bowie, Queen, Journey, whatever. So most of the band are orchestra players, including my wife. She plays violin. They come from the orchestra world. And in the orchestra world, you wear all black. And if you're wearing a tie, it's white ties. So that's where that came from,
Okay.
because I founded it with my brother Jonathan Clark, who's the bass player and musical director of the band. And in '94, he had the White Tie Jazz Ensemble. So you can find me on Facebook at White Tie Rock Ensemble. And we do have a website, but our Facebook page is really where we do that. But I'm on Instagram. I'm on all the socials. Marcus Ellis, you can find me there. But I'd love to talk to you. Hit me up in the DMs, whatever it takes, man.
Okay, and of course I have that information in the show description to make it easier for everybody.
Perfect.
Thank you for joining me. Really
Thank you for
appreciate having you
me, man.
on. Yeah, we finally got the set done.
Yep.
So thank you again, and remember, keep pushing forward.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Brown Sugar Cafe podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Terrence P. Elmore, and this is the place where poetry meets conversation. Hit that follow button and turn on your notifications so you won't miss an episode. Check out my blog, thebrownsugarcafe.blog. Also connect with me on Instagram at thebrownsugarcafe. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, remember, keep pushing forward.